What if Hitler was brought back to life in 2021? There's a lot of options here, and almost none of them look good for Hitler because things are not the same in 2021 as they were almost 100 years ago. Not even close. If Hitler was brought back to life in 2021, let's just say that he was brought back at the age he died at. Because at this point, if he somehow faked his own death and managed to shave his mustache and live a normal life all this time, he would be 132 years old, which would mean he probably isn't in the greatest shape health-wise, but that would also make him the oldest person to have ever lived, and even before his death, it was rumored that he was falling ill. These rumors include talks of things like an advanced stage of Parkinson's. So if this really was the case, we'd of course have to study him and stuff because the oldest man ever equals a scientific anomaly, or he's immortal, or he's a time traveler. Let's just for a second think about if a 132-year-old Hitler appeared, because, well, we can. He probably wouldn't be in a great frame of mind because, well, the whole old age thing. If this were the case, it's unclear on whether or not he would end up standing trial for his crimes. Not only would doctors and scientists be extremely interested to find out how he had lived that long, and it's extremely likely he would be the subject of plenty of medical tests, but he may not be able to stand trial due to the lack of an ability to follow the proceedings. If this was the case, it is very likely that he would be placed in some sort of facility until he died or was killed. This is under the assumption that his mind isn't doing well at 132 years old, but if he was somehow still fully competent, then there would be no real reason for him not to stand trial for the things he did. And that would be a celebrated day. If he came back at 132 years old, there's definitely no way he would be able to try and resume what he was once doing. He would be threatening to absolutely no one and would probably need assistance just to get out of bed in the morning. Not exactly dictator qualities. If Hitler somehow came back to life at the age he died at, like if he was frozen in time and somehow reappeared, what happens right after really depends on where in the world he reappeared. In a lot of places, it's likely he would be killed. Almost immediately. Like, no one would kill a guy just for looking like Hitler, but if it ended up being confirmed somehow, it is highly likely that he wouldn't even make it to trial because the people would get him first. If he was killed by the people, it's also likely that nothing would happen to those who took part in the crime. Authorities would likely turn a blind eye because it's in everyone's best interest for someone like that to remain where he's been for the last 70-something years. In other places, it's more likely he wouldn't be killed and instead he would spend a great deal of time answering the number of questions people have for him. The questions would range from things like ideological questions to historical questions to militaristic questions, and I mean the list just goes on. Think to yourself right now, if you were sitting there with him and you could only ask him questions, you'd have an unbelievable amount of things to question him about, because how does someone do the things he did? How does someone become that evil? Does 2021 Hitler still think like the old one? There would be no shortage of questions. That's for sure. Unfortunately, there are some people in this world, if he did come back, who would think of him as some sort of messiah and would send adoring letters and gifts to him. Thankfully, this is likely a small number of the population, but still, it's uncomfortable to acknowledge that people out there like that do exist. In the off chance he wasn't killed immediately, he would definitely stand trial, similar to the Nuremberg trials, which were the trials that took place between 1945 and 1946, in which 24 of the most important political and military leaders of the Third Reich were tried for their crimes. The outcome of the trial would probably be a death sentence, which I don't think I have to explain, unless this trial took place in a country or area where the death penalty doesn't exist, and in those cases he would likely spend the rest of his life locked up in prison. During the trial, there would be a plethora of things that come out. He would have to explain how everything happened, he would have to answer for the crimes he committed, he would have to detail his plans, his goals he never got to see come to fruition. We would hear a lot about the things we don't know and the things we can all be glad never happened. There is the possibility if he woke up and was found by authorities in a country before the general public knew, he might be granted asylum. I'm not sure which country would do this, but for the sake of asking the question, I'm just trying to cover all possible angles here. At this point, he would never be able to leave that country because the minute he does, it's over from there. If he awoke in a country or somehow found himself in a country that was not granting him asylum, he would be arrested and never let out again, so this is basically the only chance he would have at any type of freedom. If he was living in a place where he wasn't going to be executed for his crimes, he would likely be allowed to live a free life. Well, as free of a life as he could live, because just imagine the death threats and the assassination attempts that would be coming his way. It is very likely that wherever he lived would need to be heavily guarded, and he probably wouldn't be able to move around a lot and go to a lot of places. Even sorting his own mail would be dangerous. Basically, he would not have a normal life either way, in or out of prison. He would be locked up and guarded with little to no mobility. If a young Hitler were to enter our world now and try to do the things he once did, he would have little to no success for a few reasons. Firstly, it has been noted that he was a great orator, but an orator does not a world leader make. Not anymore. A lot of Hitler's success was due to the circumstances at the time, particularly the circumstances Germany was in. After World War I, the German economy and government were both struggling greatly. This was due to the Treaty of Versailles, which was the most important peace treaty which helped end World War I. The reason this treaty was an issue for Germany was because part of it stated that Germany had to accept the responsibility of Germany and her allies for causing all of the loss and damage during the war. This article, which was Article 231, went on to become known as the War Guilt Clause, and it ended up meaning that Germany had to disarm, make territorial concessions to places like France and Poland, and pay reparations to certain countries. These payments were assessed to have been around 132 billion gold marks, which is about $442 billion US in today's money. That is an insane amount of money. These reparations completely destabilized the German economy and caused mass amounts of inflation. In September of 1923, 4 billion German marks held the equivalent value of $1 American dollar. A lot of people would argue that this treaty was way too harsh and actually counterproductive, but in that same respect, people on the Allied forces side would go on to criticize the treaty for being too lenient. At the end of the day, we aren't here to talk about our feelings about the treaty, so let's get back to our question. Because of this precarious situation Germany was in, Hitler, who was a great speaker, would address in political meetings that Germany needed a new order to replace what he saw as an incompetent and inefficient democratic regime. This is when his ideas of the new order, which was the authoritarian political system, began to come out. How did race get brought into this? That's a wonderful question that we'll have to save for another video, but we all know what happened from here on out. Hitler's rise to power could in part be chalked up to the situation Germany was in, but considering that is not how things are going in Germany here in 2021, the same sort of thing would be implausible. Not impossible, but highly unlikely. Hitler saw an opportunity when Germany was in a vulnerable spot, and he took advantage of it. If Hitler was brought back to life in 2021, he certainly would not live even close to the life he once did, if he even had the chance to continue on living. We are all extremely aware of this specific dark spot in our world history, and there is no way he would ever be in a position of power again. All we can do is be thankful that he will never be brought back to life, and remember these times and how they happened so that we can ensure something like it never happens again. Thank you guys for watching today's video. Make sure you hit that thumbs up if you enjoyed the video today, and smash that subscribe button if you want to see more. Don't forget to be kind to each other and stay curious. I'll see you on the next one, LBQ. Bye!